High Performance Vet Pro Radio.
Welcome to High Performance Vet Pro Radio. Here, you will learn everything you need to know to become a high-performance veterinary professional. We will focus on optimizing your sleep, fitness, nutrition, mental performance, stress response, and work-life balance. Please enjoy these professional interviews with cutting-edge content from Dr. Jennifer Quammen and human performance coach Ryan Smith from hyperfliving.com.
And welcome to today's interview. This is Ryan Smith with High Performance Living and High Performance Vet Pro Radio. Today's guest has a lot to share about a heart-brain connection that we have, dealing with stress and a state called coherence. So when talking with veterinary professionals, everybody's familiar with heart rate, but very few are actually aware of something called heart rate variability, which is a way of measuring the stress response and sympathetic versus parasympathetic control within our stress response. So really what's awareness in the veterinary professional is this high suicide, depression, alcoholism rate. And so I wanted to bring somebody outside the industry to kind of really talk about this and how we might be able to manage our stress response in our daily lives. So our guest today is Howard Martin. He is Senior Vice President with the HeartMath Institute in HeartMath, and he's got more than 30 years of business experience and in the personal development field as well as other business. He's spoken worldwide, and he has a TED Talk out there as well, and is a HeartMath solution co-author, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So as we were talking just a moment ago, today may be a little bit different than a lot of the talks that you do because we're really gearing this towards veterinary professionals because we're trying to create some change because they deal with so many different things in their career. And my partner, she is a veterinarian, and we're really focused on raising the higher standard of living within veterinary professionals. So we talked a little bit about heart rate variability. I just mentioned it there. Can you give us a little bit on heart rate variability and how HeartMath Institute kind of plays into that?
Sure, Ryan. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be with you today and have this conversation. And I'd like to say hello to everyone who may be listening to this podcast, wherever you are, whenever you're listening to it. Just know that that I feel connected to the subject, and hopefully I can share some things today that will be useful for you.
Thank you.
So in regards to heart rate variability, well, here at HeartMath, HeartMath is an organization. We're a big little organization now, employ about 100 people, operate around the world, and basically, we have a heart-based system of tools, techniques, and technology, all designed to help empower people through these changing times. And with a system like that, and it's based around, the qualities that are associated with heart, we recognized years ago that we needed to apply science to understanding that so that heart could be accepted more and grounded more, not just held in the respected confines of philosophy and spirituality. So we began to do research on understanding how the physical heart was doing more than pumping blood. We had indications from other research that it was more than certainly a slavish blood pump. What we found and what other researchers have found is that the heart is actually a very important information processing center in our body at the physical level, at the actual pumping heart level. It's sending powerful healing commands to the brain and throughout the entire body. One of the ways that you can measure that communication is looking at what is called heart rate variability analysis. Here's what that is. When we go to a doctor says, "Hey, Howard, your heart rate was 75 beats a minute." I never questioned that. I had this sort of general impression that I never really looked at, that my heart was sort of beating at this steady pace. That's not true. What the doctor basically tells me when he or she says your heart rate is 75 beats a minute is that's an average. What's actually happening inside our bodies is that the timing between each heartbeat is actually changing and varying. Between, say, one time that it pumps and the next time it pumps, it could be 0.523 seconds. Between the next two, 0.686, or the next two, 323. It's constantly varying, speeding up and slowing down. It's supposed to do this. It's how the heart pumps blood in a very nuanced kind of way to compensate for all the various things that we're doing, whether it's speech, walking, reading, whatever we happen to be doing. The heart is changing its rhythmic beating patterns to do what it needs to do for our physiology. Now, one of the things that researchers never knew or looked at until HeartMath came along was what are the effects that emotions have on heart rate variability. And what we found was that emotion was probably one of the greatest influencers of these changing heart rhythms or heart patterns. We had a study published back in the 90s that illustrated this. One of our first major studies was published in the American Journal of Cardiology, and it was about exactly that. So what we found was that depending upon what we're experiencing emotionally, that will determine how the heart is beating. What kind of pattern is it beating in? How is it speeding up? How is it slowing down? And that's what heart rate variability is the measurement of that speeding up and slowing down and the patterns in which the heart is beating. It's different than just heart rate, which is like saying beats per minute, like a fitness monitor would give you. This is measuring the nuanced changes between each heart rhythm. It's important because when we are experiencing a strong negative emotion, let's say, Ryan, we were feeling frustrated or angry or impatient, those kind of emotions, it throws those heart rhythms into a very chaotic pattern. That's hard on our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. It's not good for the physical heart. It triggers the release of hormones into our body that are not good for us in excessive amounts. And they'd be hormones like adrenaline and cortisol.
Right.
And the signals cascade up into the brain, and they begin to shut down the higher perceptual centers of the brain to create a condition called cortical inhibition. That's the bad news. The good news is this, is when we are experiencing positive emotions, many of those were the ones associated with the concept of heart, like we're feeling care for someone or something, or compassion, or love, or forgiveness, or non-judgment. Those kind of emotions produce the opposite effect. They create a very ordered pattern in the heart rate variability. Those patterns are good for the nervous system, good for the physical heart. They trigger hormone releases in our body that regenerate us, like DHEA, for example, the anti-aging hormone. And those signals cascade up into the brain, and they open up the higher perceptual centers of the brain. They create a condition called cortical facilitation. Okay. So really, truly, you'll see on the HeartMath's logo a lot of times a statement that's been made a long time: a change of heart changes everything.
Right.
Well, the heart rate variability, we can see at a very physiological, measurable level that's true. As the heart changes its rhythmic beating patterns, it changes everything that's happening in our body, including our brain.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense. And I guess is that where also the concept of coherence that we kind of mentioned early, how does that kind of play into that as well?
Yeah, well, when everything's working right, Ryan, when it's all synced up and the heart rate variability pattern has this sine wave-like speeding up and slowing down, it's a really synchronized pattern. What happens is we enter this state called coherence. And the medical term for it is psychophysiological coherence. What's happening when we're in the coherent state is that all the body's systems are synchronized to that rhythmic beating pattern of the heart. Those systems are things like digestion, respiration, immune system response, hormonal output, and brain function. And all that synchronizes. So we end up in this really healthy, highly efficient physiological state. We train athletes, for example, in coherence building skills because it improves things like visual field, reaction speed time, the ability to regulate emotions, things like that. So there's a huge benefit to increasing coherence. The psychological part of this is that one of the things that is a primary trigger of coherence is the experience of positive emotions, the things I was talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. When we're experiencing positive emotions, our system generally goes into the more coherent state. Where it gets even more interesting is once we get to a higher level of coherence, then those type of emotions become more readily available. It's easier to feel good about life.
Right.
Easier to feel appreciation for things rather than myopically focused on a problem, shutting out all the other stuff that's going on in your life that's good. And all of that is easier to experience and easier to access once we're in the coherent state. So physiologically, it's highly ordered, it's efficient. Psychologically, it's very positive and beneficial from that regard. It's not a sleepy time state. We get into coherence through a lot of things we do. When people pray, for example, or meditate, they would naturally go probably to a more coherent state. A walk in the beautiful woods, playing with your child or your grandchild, enjoying the unconditional love from your pet.
Right.
All those things engender coherence. And so it's not a state that you just get to by being relaxed or going into some meditative pose. That definitely can help.
Right.
But it's a state that's very interactive with life itself. It's one that allows us to really be fully engaged with the experience of life.
Right. And this may be a little bit out of your realm, but since we're talking with a lot of veterinarians, veterinary professionals, one of the things that I've heard about whenever I kind of first started studying heart rate variability a few years ago was the concept of that heart rate variability actually goes outside of your body and your field is outside of your body. But I guess one of the examples I heard was if somebody walks into a horse stall, and I have a horse background, that the animal's heart rate variability would end up matching the heart rate variability of the human. Is that something kind of that goes along with this coherence concept, or?
Yeah, you're on it. Yes, we have seen that. Let me just to clarify one thing. Another aspect of heart and how it's communicating is through an energetic field. It's an electromagnetic field created by the beating heart. It's the heart's actually the strongest source of bioelectricity in our body, about 40 to 60 times stronger than the second most powerful source, which is our brain. So we create this electromagnetic field, and it not only goes to every single cell in our body, but it extends beyond our skin out into space, about 3 to 4 feet. The field is constantly changing, and what's changing it, again, is our emotions. Strong negative emotions produce a chaotic field. Positive emotions produce a coherent field. Now, what you're alluding to is we've done two actually experiments between people and animals. The one that's most famous is the story of Josh and Mabel, the boy and the dog. Mabel was a Labrador Retriever. Beautiful dog. Was actually my pet, and I love that dog so deeply. And Josh was the son of our research director, Dr. Roland McCready. There was an after-school program that was being held at my house for HeartMath employees' children. Josh developed a bond with Mabel as being over at the house for the after-school program. One day his father noticed the love being exchanged by the boy and the dog, so he decided to do an experiment. He put a portable heart rate variability recorder on the dog. He put one on his son. He put them in separate rooms. He had Josh enter the room, and he told Josh to have no physical contact with the dog. Just go in and sit down on the floor and don't touch the dog. He went in and did that, and what we saw, and I've showed these graphs in my live shows, and it's amazing. It's like as Josh enters the room, he goes into a coherent heart rhythm pattern, and so does Mabel simultaneously, an exact match. So they went into the synchronized coherent state between the boy and the dog with no physical contact, just through the expression of love they had for one another.
Wow.
The same type of experiment was done by a woman in Santa Barbara, California, with her horse, Tonopah. She would put a recorder on the horse and then put one on herself. She would sit next to the corral. She would do a heart-focused technique, a HeartMath technique called the heart lock-in, and she would radiate the feelings of love to the horse, from her heart to the horse. And what we see there is the same thing happening. Ellen goes into coherence, and so does the horse. And again, they're not touching. There's an energetic transfer that's occurring there, non-local transfer that's not easily explained by the boundaries of time and space, to where something's being transmitted between people and animals that the animals can detect, and so can the people. And it creates a coherence in both. Actually, Ellen did it with all of her horses. She had 13. The same effect happened in 12 out of 13.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. I mean, and coming from a horse background and as a horse trainer in my earlier days, depending on my mood, I could tell from whenever I was dealing with my animal if I was frustrated or whatnot, and then that was a day that I was actually having trouble. My horse was actually having more trouble understanding me as well. So I can kind of relate to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. And I didn't know you had that background. I did too, as a young person. I was raised in Virginia, which is kind of horse country, and had horses, a lot of horses. And I had a horse that was my show horse, and I won every championship you can imagine, and was named at 11 years old Horseman of the Year in the state of Virginia.
Wow.
And so I learned about horses and their sensitivity. And there's certainly a communication that happens. It's not even verbal.
Right, absolutely.
It's much more energetic between the horse than it is anything you say to that horse. But yet there's a communication that happens, and I sensed it, years ago. And I think one of the reasons I did well in that horse show environment is because I love that horse so much.
Right.
We were friends. We were best friends. And this was an adventure we were on, as a young boy and his horse. an adventure of being at the horse shows with my mom and dad and all that. And I think that horse was a part of the whole thing energetically. You know, that it was more than just me riding a horse into a ring and competing with some other horses.
Right. Absolutely. And kind of coming, still my background comes with a lot of this natural horsemanship too, which this, kind of explains a lot of it as well. Because whenever you take some of these great horsemanship people, whether it be Ray Hunt or Buck Brannaman, who was the Horse Whisperer movie was kind of written about, whenever you look at them, and I've actually been to their clinics, and you can watch, because they are so in love with these horses, every horse that they are around, that horse changes immediately.
Yeah, there's a great there's a luxury resort spa in Tucson called Mirabal, and they're a HeartMath client. And they have a guy there too named Wyatt that does a horse experience. It's one of the most popular things they have there, and I've done it with him. And it was obvious, and he was showing me very clearly that, as I was trying to get the horse to do certain things, stick his foot up, etc., he just called me aside and he said, "You need to get out of your ego and forget who you are for a minute.
Right.
Drop all that. I'm Howard Martin from HeartMath stuff, and get out of all that. And what I want you to do is really get down deeper in your heart, and I want you to communicate with that horse from that genuine kind of way, and forget all that other stuff for a while." And
Right.
Sure enough, the horse responded.
Right. Absolutely. So, and I think that's something that a lot of the listeners will relate to as well, because even if it's not a horse, they're going to relate to, whether it be a dog or a cat or some animal that they've, dealt with, whether it's as a patient or one that's their own. And obviously, many times you're going to have closeness with the ones that are the closest to you. But, this is a way of putting science with the feelings that you've had about your animals.
Yeah, and I'm not a veterinarian, obviously, and don't know that world in great detail. I appreciate you having me on the show to speak to this without having that background. But let me just say I have a great respect for veterinarians as I observe what they do. They have to diagnose patients who can't talk.
Right.
They have a lot that they have to figure out there. And not only that, they're dealing with not just the animal, but they're dealing with the people who own the animal.
Right.
Who have great attachment to that animal.
Absolutely.
And it's a difficult job, I'm sure. When I was young, very young, I wanted to be a veterinarian. That was like when you're growing up and you decide what you want to be when you grow up when you're a little kid,
Right.
It was a veterinarian. It never happened. I ended up doing something very, very different. But that was my first inspiration. I guess because I had such love for animals. And I know that being a veterinarian has a lot of ups and downs. I'm sure it can be very difficult. It's a business. You're running a practice.
Right.
I'm sure there are lots of challenges associated with that. But I have respect for what they do.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's great. Again, that was kind of my background to being around horses, but my background is actually in exercise physiology for the last 25 years and dealing in human performance and kind of, so this, with this partnership that I have with my partner who's a veterinarian, this allows us to apply the coaching aspect that I come from a performance to a very competitive field as well. So, but I guess one of the big things that we have with veterinarians is we talked a little bit ago about compassion, but they have a high degree of this compassion fatigue. They've got financial stress because many of them, whenever they're coming out of school, the young veterinarians that are coming out now, they're coming out with several $100,000 in school debt, which is even more than a lot of people are coming out whenever they're coming out with school. We're dealing with alcohol and self-medication from this standpoint because it's easy access. And then, a lot of them are even prescribed antidepressants because they're dealing with this. And obviously that's a whole separate issue there as well. How can these professionals, what can we do to kind of help them, guide them on the way to where they can kind of get control of their emotion, their response to the stresses that are going on, their compassion? What can we do to kind of help them along that lines?
Well, the first thing I want to say is not to be minimalizing or trivializing what veterinarians go through specifically, but I would like to say that don't feel alone.
Right.
It's going on through just about every societal sector that there is right now.
Right.
We are in an extraordinary time period in the history of our world. We are going through more change in less time than ever before. And it's a huge amount of change. It's moving us in a good direction despite what it looks like at times. A new world is emerging right in the midst of the old one that we have. But that much change happening in a short amount of time creates some challenges. And as I travel and travel the world, actually, and meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of folks and try to find out what's going on for them, I can sum up what's happening to most people in one word: overwhelm. People
Definitely.
feeling overwhelmed by everything in their life. It's almost as if people are being pushed over sort of a psychological ledge by all the change and all the things they have to do in their personal lives, as well as what's happening across the global stage. So it's an overall global issue, and it has specific aspects to it for each part of society, including veterinarians. But that's the first thing I want veterinarians to know is please don't feel alone. Don't feel like this is all on you or that it's just you. The second thing I like to say is if you're experiencing those things, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel like you've done anything wrong. Self-compassion is one of the first ways to begin to shift things, is that you have to recognize that, there are many of us, good people in the world, trying to do good things in a challenging time period, and we're not always going to meet our own expectations or the expectations of others. And as we hit those places, one of the main things to do is to not let us take us down too far through the process of self-judgment. That's never good.
Right.
It's like compound interest on a bad investment,
Right.
So it's hard to shift that. I understand that because we have expectations. I certainly can feel that. I can make a mistake or have a communication that doesn't please me, and it's difficult sometimes for me to shake that feeling. But that's the goal, is to really begin to move that out of my system and to get back to a more balanced, neutral place inside myself. So there are things people can do. There are lots of information out there in the world today, tools and techniques that people can try. HeartMath is a whole system of those things, not designed just to deal with stress. It's designed to really increase the human performance. In the process of increasing human performance, you have to deal with certain things like the excessive amount of stress in our lives. So, yeah, we have a system, but there are many systems out there.
Right.
The main thing is whatever you learn that resonates with you, whatever that you run across out there in life that you think that seems to be helping you or that sort of you can respect and appreciate, is do it, but do it with as much sincerity and authenticity as you can. Sort of swiping at things today is not going to get the job done.
Right.
You have to choose some things you want to do and try and then commit to them. And find things that are easy for you to do and integrate into your lifestyle. We don't need one more thing to do right now.
Right.
So we need to find things that we will do that are efficient, that we can commit to.
Right.
And I have things built into my lifestyle that, are just built in, and things that I do to maintain a certain emotional equilibrium. And I've done it long enough and built it in enough now that it's become, they become things like brushing my teeth.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I get up in the morning and I'm doing certain things, and brushing my teeth is a part of it. I don't never not brush my teeth, right?
Exactly.
I
Right.
don't even think about it. I go in the bathroom, I brush them, and I built other things into my life that are really brushing some of the emotional discord away as well, so that I can enter my day in the best place that I can be and then function in the most caring, loving ways that I can during the course of my day.
Right. And I've got to say for myself, knowing from a background, again, in exercise physiology, but time with stress and everything, and using both HeartMath as well as I've used other technology like with Sweetwater, HRV, and using their technology as well with athletes and stuff. But how learning to get control of myself has made me a better father, better partner, better business person, and really taught me how to kind of think through things and not stress about them as much. So if you had met me 3 years ago, I was a completely different person than I am now, probably even a year ago. It's because of the things that I've learned within the science-based technology that we have there.
Well, one of the things about these changing times is that it's not all about stress and it's about bad. The same sort of energetic momentum that's creating the changes is actually creating opportunities for us to grow and to be different and to exceed and excel, move beyond our mediocrity in ways we've never been able to do it before.
Right.
So it becomes a matter of getting on top of that a little bit. We've talked about appreciation just a tad earlier, and that's one of the quickest things we can do to sort of begin to shift things. Like, we all have problems and issues, but if we focus only on them, then we stay right there with them. We're focusing, right on the problem, and the problem can simply be getting fed more energy.
Right.
One of the ways to back off from that a little bit is to appreciate other things. Appreciate the good things in our lives. to back up and see it more from a big picture view rather than the problem that seems to be, eating us for breakfast today.
Right.
And that appreciation begins to shift the energetic momentums inside ourselves right down to our physiology, and it begins to open up, perception to new possibilities. And then if we act on those possibilities, we begin to create change in our life. And we do that, some each day. It begins to build, and pretty soon we've shifted ourselves out of who we were before to something that we're now, that's very different.
Right.
And that we function in a very different way, and we benefit from that. And so you can start with something as easily as remembering to appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, that whole sense of gratitude is a major player in changing your attitude. So, well, great. So in some of some of the veterinary professionals that will be listening, so some of them are going to be leading, heading up clinics, whether they're owners or, potentially even practice managers, or as a veterinarian that's within a hospital or a clinic. They may want to kind of bring some of this stuff because it's not necessarily them that is dealing with this, but maybe somebody else that's in their environment. What types of tools, technology would you suggest, or what does HeartMath even offer that would allow somebody to kind of train their coherence or bring it into a clinic and allow multiple people to work in? So what types of training things do you have?
Well, we have a lot of cool stuff. First of all, for someone that doesn't want to go see all that, there are free things on the HeartMath.com and HeartMath.org websites, like the Inner Ease booklet would be an example of that. A state we can go into that helps us with these things. So there's things that we offer just as a service to humanity. But we're also in business, and we also are systematically helping to address these issues around the world. So we have things like the HeartMath Certified Coach Mentor Program. Mm-hmm. This is something that professionals use. Medical professionals use this, have people in their offices trained in this so that they can implement it in some way within the practice and with the patients. It's a course that you take. It's taken over 6 weeks, an hour a week on the telephone. It teaches 6 key core HeartMath tools and techniques. It provides a license for the person that went through it to brand themselves as a HeartMath certified coach mentor, and then become part of a network of others who are using this and who are also certified. And there are people around the world. There's probably 5,000 of these people around the world right now who are HeartMath certified coaches. And that's one of the things that's become very popular. I mean, coaching and mentoring is a very fast-growing field, and it applies to things, in organizations for sure. So, for example, we work with health professionals here at HeartMath. There are over 30,000 in our database right now who use HeartMath in some way in a variety of disciplines. And they're finding very interesting ways of bringing sort of the HeartMath tools and techniques into their practices to supplement and augment not only the patient, but also to help the staff. Mm-hmm. That's one way. You mentioned the technology earlier. We developed technology that trains people to be more coherent. It's the same technology, same patented algorithms in any of the forms that we have it in, but we have it in basically 3 forms. M-Wave Pro, which is a version of it that you use on your computer. M-Wave 2, which is a handheld device that measures coherence and trains you to be more coherent. And the third way is called Inner Balance Trainer, which is the same technology, but it's been now put into the use on iOS devices. Any Apple iPhone, iPad, or iTouch, you can now have the same experience on your device. You purchase a sensor that picks up your heart rhythms, and then the app transmits that into heart rate variability analysis and also coherence scoring. And all those things synchronized to a cloud where you can see your data, you see all your progress, you get awards, you can see, what the community itself is doing, all that's there as well. So the technology's become a big part of what I think we've done here at HeartMath to help people, because we've created a technology that's good for people, that helps enhance their lives, that increases their coherence, thereby improving their health and their overall well-being. So certification as a coach mentor is one way to do it. Mm-hmm. Getting an M-Wave or an Inner Balance Trainer is another way. There are books you can read. My book, The HeartMath Solution, is considered by most people to be the definitive work on heart intelligence. And if none of that's appropriate for you, just go to the site and get something for free, because we're trying to do everything we can to provide valuable information to people during these changing times.
Right. Yeah, it's great, and I myself have used the interbalance sensor as well as the M-Wave 2. The most recently, I actually had a client who is going into the Navy SEALs, and we were actually using the interbalance sensor for him before he was going away to kind of help him train his coherence and his resilience, so that when he's dealing with those situations, he can handle and he can recognize his response and kind of handle it from there too. So it's been a great tool for us.
Good.
So yeah.
We've trained a lot of people in military, actually, and trained a lot of soldiers going into the, where we have combat operations happening, and we've also trained a whole lot of them who've come back and needed help.
Right.
And it's been an area that we've had great results in along the way, is working with the military and training them on coherence building skills, increasing resilience, things like that are useful to them.
Right. Well, great. And, of course, I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well as your time. So I just got a couple of things here left just to ask about as well. So we've talked a little bit about the global stuff that you've done. So what types of things does HeartMath have going on from a global perspective?
Global meaning the work we do around the world, or a global coherence initiative?
Well, the most recent thing is the Global Coherence Initiative. I find that was really an interesting concept.
Well, it's definitely something that's very progressive, and I think it has a huge potential. It's something we started about 5 years ago. It's a part of our nonprofit, and we were bringing people together all around the world to use their heart focus care and their intention to help shift, basically the planetary consciousness from the discord and conflict and all that we see today, to balance, cooperation, and enduring peace. So we have activities, we have things we send out to people, things we ask them to contribute to in terms of what they put their heart into and things like that. And there's no denomination to it, things like that. It's about people doing what they feel comfortable with, whatever techniques or processes or prayers or meditations or affirmations or any of that they do. There's people, I think 60, 70,000 people now that are members, and they come from over 100 countries. Now, there are a lot of organizations doing something similar. I applaud those organizations. The other part that we bring to this party, so to speak, is the science, because we're basically a science-based organization. So our scientists, working with other scientists, have created technology that can measure changes, very sensitive changes occurring in the Earth's energetic fields, in particular the ionosphere and the geomagnetic field. These are the Earth's protective layers at an energetic level. They're like energetic ecology. They protect us from space weather, and without these fields, no life exists. The fields are constantly fluctuating and changing, influenced by a lot of things. And science knows well now that changes in the fields are affecting human health and behavior. Right on down to brain function, heart rate variability, all those things are being influenced by changes occurring in the geomagnetic field in the ionosphere. So we have a hypothesis that we are also influencing those fields, that mass human emotion has an impact on the Earth's energetic fields. It's a big hypothesis, and we have to prove that out or disprove it. So we've created technology that can measure these changes, and we're deploying Global Coherence Initiative monitoring sites around the world in strategic locations. Eventually, we will want 12 as we build it out to get a complete picture of these fields. Today, we have one in Northern California, here where we're located. We have another in Northern Canada. The third one is in Lithuania. The fourth sensor is in Saudi Arabia. The fifth is in New Zealand. Very soon, the sixth one will go into South Africa. And then after that, the seventh one will be placed somewhere in Peru. So what we're doing is a grand experiment.
Right.
And there are many cool people involved in this on our boards, et cetera. One of those is an author, a very famous author named Jack Canfield.
Yes.
And Jack told me one time, he said, Howard, I think this is probably the most important experiment in the history of the world. I said, that's a big statement, Jack. Why do you feel that way? He said, if this proved to be true, it would show that all of our thoughts, our prayers, our intentions, our meditations are real, that they have an energetic and measurable impact on things. And so the way I saw that is that we don't necessarily have to have that proof. We do it anyway. That's why we pray for someone who's sick, for example.
Right.
We believe that it's having an effect. But when something gets proven scientifically, it creates more belief. And through the power of belief, the power of effectiveness increases. And so if this proved to be true, it would add, I think, a huge understanding to the fact that we are all energetically communicating.
Right.
And that all things are energetically connected. And I think that's one of the next unfoldments in human consciousness is a greater awareness of this and then practical application of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartely agree. Yeah. Well,
So that's what that's about. So that's the fun part of HeartMath, one thing that I'm really passionate about. I love it. And I talk about it a lot, as I'm traveling and doing my talks and things. It's something people really seem to resonate with. A lot of people want to help in different ways and want to be parts of things like that. And the fact that we have some science going on underneath it is very intriguing and exciting to people.
Right. And that's really where I guess the nonprofit, the HeartMath Institute, comes into play, correct?
Yeah, they do a lot of the research. They also work in education. They also work in military. But there's a separate site for Global Coherence Initiative. It's glcoherence.org, or just Google Global Coherence Initiative. You can go there and become a member. There's no charge or anything for that. Become a member and join with people all around the world who are interested in this sort of a thing and making an energetic contribution to it.
Great.
And I think as we do that, going back to the question you had earlier, is it helps us in a way. We benefit from that. I know veterinarians are giving a lot. You mentioned they often have a lot of compassion burnout from how much they give.
Right.
We have to make sure we're giving to ourselves first so that we can maintain a certain balance. But as we give, as we put out more of our love and care into the world, it comes back to us.
Right.
And that's one of the quickest ways, I think, to deal with our stresses is to, from a balanced way, not some gushy-mushy way or overdone way, but to have a general way in which we walk in the world with more consideration for others, with the dignity and the nobility that we have inside that expresses itself through our care and appreciation. When we do that with consistency, life does, in fact, get better.
Agreed. Absolutely. So, well, great. So we'll put some in the show notes. We'll have links to the Global Coherence Initiative. We'll put, obviously, heartmath.org and heartmath.com, so we can have links to some of the different things in there, as well as I'll put a link to your book and kind of have a list of all the different things. That way, if anybody has questions, obviously they can go through HeartMath to get those answered as well. And from there, I mean, any other things that you can think about? I mean, just take just a second here if there was anything else that you wanted to kind of dive into.
Well, no, I think we've covered a lot of important things today. I'd just like to say that I hope that our conversation has provided, something of benefit to people who are taking their time to listen to it.
Yep.
And we're doing this, but the people who are listening to it are also investing their time as well.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we've made it meaningful in some way, or that there's been, something said somewhere, during the conversation that people can draw something from.
Definitely. So, and agree. I completely agree with that. And with that, thanks for joining us on, High Performance Vet Pro Radio. And, if you would like to leave some comments, we're on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, etc. And we will, you can always send us a message over at the website at highperfliving.com. Talk about our programs. And, Howard, I appreciate you being on the show, and I'm going to let you go, and we'll kind of go from there. And everybody have a great week.
Ryan, thank you so much, and all the best to you, and I hope that we have a chance to meet again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at High Performance Vet Pro Radio. We hope to hear from you soon. Like this episode? Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. It helps us to reach more veterinary professionals. For more information or to contact us, please visit us at highperfliving.com. Until next time, remember to live every day with intention.